We
Hello,
sure can.
everyone. It's Jen from Fated Mates, and Sarah cannot be with us, but I have two very exciting guests with us today, Kate and Grace from the New York Public Library. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so one of the reasons that we're really having this like really fun little talk today is that the New York Public Library has just put out a really fun list in advance of um Valentine's Day, of high holy holidays of Romance Landia. And they are gonna kind of be here today to talk to us about like the list itself. You'll be able to you'll be able to look at the list. I'll make sure there's a link underneath this on YouTube. And also to like talk to us about like kind of how and why the library loves romance readers. So, can we start off by talking about the list itself and why, I don't know, like, is this something something you do every year, you all?
Yes, we actually started this in 2021. It was during the great pandemic, and it we were all working from home. We need stuff, so there were a bunch of adult committees started. So we made like the top 10 best romances of the year, and the reason it's always like the best new romances, even though it's for like last year. This list used to come out in November, and now it's time to come out in Valentine's Day.
Perfect. Perfect. And Kate, I'm sorry, I had like a whole list of things we were gonna do, and then I went out of order because I got so excited about talking about the books. So, Kate, what is your job at the New York Public Library?
I am a young adult librarian at the Bloomingdale branch on the Upper West Side. No relation to Bloomingdale's, and we used to get a lot of phone calls for them as well.
Okay, that's hilarious.
Mhm.
Okay, and
It's
Grace,
really
what about
great.
you? What's your job at the library?
I am also a teen librarian at the St. George branch in Staten Island.
Okay, perfect. I
Yes.
am a middle school teacher, so together, right, we could probably rule the
Yeah.
world, or at least get everyone
We
to,
probably could.
right?
Yep.
Hmm.
Now, but this is not, I want to make clear to everybody, this is not a list for this is a list of adult romances, right?
Very adult.
Yes. Okay.
Very,
So
yes.
how, if you're teen librarians, how did you end up on the adult romance beat?
It's great. We actually put out a call out for anyone who works at NYPL who loves reading romance to join this committee. So we've had not just librarians, we've had clerks, we've had office aides, we've had information assistants,
Fun.
just people who are just really, really super excited about romance and just want to talk romance every month. And it's
Yeah.
fantastic. And everyone has such incredibly different tastes as well. So it helps us make a really robust and diverse list.
Okay. And this list, I think we're recording. Is it today, the day that it went live?
I think
It,
so.
yeah, so this is like
Yes.
February 10th when we're recording it, a couple days before Valentine's Day. So when you put, so it's, I actually forgot to look. I have like sort of a list on the paper or whatever, but when so you put this on your website, like how does this help you like reach out to romance readers in the community, and how do you think it helps like sort of, I don't know, like let romance readers, is there more than just like you're welcome here? Like what's the goal of a list like this from your point of view?
Grace, do you want to get that one? I can't read your blinks over
Um,
there.
it just helps us curate a list for other librarians to recommend to readers, and it's a great jumping off point because our system has a very robust catalog,
Yeah.
so that it's like a good jumping off point. So when we go to recommend a book, we can also point out read alikes and things like that in our fancy little catalog.
Yeah, and read alikes, everybody. If you're ever, this is like one of these little like librarians have all the secret awesome vocabulary. This is like a thing. I'm actually not kidding. I told my mom this and she was like, "Oh." I was like, "Mom, if you really like a book, like my mom loves Amor Tolls. What is his name? The Lincoln Highway guy, not a
Okay,
romance
yeah,
guy. Sorry. Let me
grown up books.
But
Yeah.
I was like, Mom, if or he wrote the A Gentleman in Moscow. And I was like, if you Google like the name of a book you like and read alike, I guarantee you that a librarian somewhere in this country has made a list because there are lots of people like you in the
Mhm.
world, right? So having a list with like read alikes and other things like that can also just really help people. Like, so, if everybody, once you look at this list later, you might be like, oh, I love this book. That's going to help librarians help you find more books like that, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's also helpful because we'll get anywhere from like teens to adults who are like, oh, I saw this book and I really want to read it. And you look at the whole list and it's like 800. I'm like, so I'll put you on hold for this. But in the meantime, we have similar books that
Yeah.
are in stock right now that you can take home with you tonight.
Right.
And that helps them as well.
So when you
Mhm.
make a list, okay, this now I'm like interested inside baseball. I'm so nosy, everybody. So
Oh, no,
everybody.
no, go ahead.
Okay. When you make a list like this, how do you go about doing it? Are you like here, like, so what's your process for making the list?
Mhm. It involves chaos sometimes.
So much chaos.
Um, um, we we have monthly meetings with our committee. Everyone brings every book that they've read that month. Well, not physically, but like talks about it, and um, people nominate their favorites, and we call the list down in a series of weekly meetings towards the end of the committee in the midst of all the chaos. We're reading constantly.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Um,
Except the
Kate, do you
week
have
I
any?
had, it's like, except the week I had to read nine, what was it? Enemies to lovers. Like, I love a good enemies to lovers. And I think I was like ready to throw every enemies to lover off a balcony. I was like, I can't read another one of these
Mhm.
for like a year. So,
Sure.
That
Now,
was a bad
it's,
week.
so
it was
you're
a bad week.
essentially, if I'm understanding this right, what you're doing is you're saying like we're essentially in the process of making the list for a full year.
Yes,
Mhm.
we start in February and we go until December. So our list was actually finalized right before Christmas 2024.
Okay.
And then it was annotation time and putting heat levels. So if you
Okay.
have someone who's really into mild romances and they only want mild romances, they can just find the mild
Right.
romances on the
Right.
list up to spicy, super spicy, and scorching.
Ooh, scorching.
And our committee usually makes fun of me because I'll be like, this book is like really scorching. And they're like, that's like just spicy. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, that's why it's really hard, right? Yeah. Um, so and then okay, so once you make the list, do you then are you buying all these books like in advance? Like, are you knowing that circulation numbers will match this? Or like, what if somebody brings do they have to already be in the system to be considered? Like, how do
That
you
is
kind of handle
such a
that
good
part?
question. Like that is like the best
Yes.
question. So all the books have to be acquirable by the library. And we are really, really lucky. The head of selection for the entire New York Public Library and the Brooklyn Public Library, Stephanie, she is a big romance nerd. So, and she'll come to the meetings and
Mhm.
she'd be like, "Oh my, yeah, if you guys all love this, yeah. Oh, I can get this for the library." So we kind of like help influence the collections as well.
Oh, fun. Yeah, right.
It's really fun.
Yeah, well, because I
Mhm.
would imagine you would anticipate like a spike in circulation of those books, like once you
Mhm.
sort of say, like, these are the ones we like best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's how
and
we got the rubber ducky book um,
yes,
purchased for the library.
Oh, is this one of those
the
sentient object romances?
yes, the
Yes.
Rubber Ducky Shifter Next Door by Mia Harlan.
We deserve nice
Yeah,
things, everyone. That's all I have to
we
say
deserve
about
nice
that.
things, and it's also if you're looking for a really quick read, if you're a fast reader, it's like 30 minutes. It's great, and I. I don't think we should apologize, but we should say you're welcome, everyone. This
Exactly.
book
We
is now in
deserve
your
nice
library.
things, right?
It's really
Um,
cute.
yeah. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is a lot of I think a lot of like regular people, right, don't really quite understand like kind of this is a challenging time for a lot of libraries, right? Like, depending on where people like our listeners live, they might There might be challenges to specific titles or book bans. There might be funding, funding issues, right? Like I'm sure every librarian in the world is constantly like thinking about 800 million other things. So one of the questions that I know a lot of our listeners will have is just like, well, how can okay, so you put out this great list, but I live in Chicago, right? I mean, one of the things to know is the New York Public Library site is anybody can look at it, right? So this list, I'm sure, is on a public front facing page. It's not like or it's not,
No passwords.
paywalled behind your cart or whatever. So everybody can see this list, right? And I'm going to ask, before we wrap up at the end, I'm going to ask them to like sort of pitch a couple that they thought were really fun and that people might enjoy. But before we get to that, how can people in their local communities help support their library? I mean, I know it's like a big question, but like, what do librarians love for patrons to say or do to show their support for the library?
I mean, one of the first things is just be nice to your librarians. We get yelled
Yeah.
at. We get it's like we're just doing our job. Just be pleasant. A smile goes such a long way.
Yeah.
It just like kind of
Yeah.
is like, oh yay, there is a reason I'm doing this. Like because we're in this job because we like helping people and we love helping connect people with books.
Hmm. And go to your library. Get your library card. Check out books. Use the online resources to show that the resources that we provide are being utilized. And just use your library. We're
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're a third space. You can come, you can hang out. You don't have to spend money.
Yeah.
And a lot of library systems will have things like museum passes for NYPL. We have
Mhm.
Culture Pass, which you can access with your library card. Other library systems have something similar. I think a few systems also will like lend out like cookie cutters,
Yes. Great.
fishing rods. Like, so it's like we have things, and we also have programs for people who are like little tiny babies to the
Wow.
elderly. I know my coworker does a Monday movie every week at 12 noon, and he gets a bunch of senior citizens and they love it, and they all watch a movie together and they have a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I just think too, it's like in a lot of ways, because they're third spaces, so many people see libraries as like a community center, right? So, for example, like a really cool thing I learned about so my son is in college and I was really okay, everybody, this is like me talking, right? So, and I'm in Chicago, right? This is like but in Chicago, they did a whole pilot where you could get Narcan
Yes.
right at the
Yes.
library for free. And then like so when my son went back to college, I like sat down with him and I was like, here's what this is, and you could save someone's life, and we're gonna watch this video about how to use it. And like I would not have known that you could like go to a library for that, right?
Mhm.
And so I think one of the other things to do is, like you could just talk to any librarian and just be like, what's a really cool thing our library does that like about that I don't, right? Because they're
Mhm.
gonna
Mhm.
know, oh my gosh, we have a tool lending library or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Honestly, we could use a tool lending library because the amount of times I'm like, do we have this weird like tool? Like I have 8,000 IKEA X keys,
Or
but it's
right,
like
but
don't know where my screwdriver is.
we have this thing, right? So, I mean, I think the other thing is like just really, along with like, and again, like using the library is the most important thing because it just shows that like the money they spend on ebooks, on books that circulate, on tools, on whatever it is, is being used by the people in the community,
Yeah.
right?
And there's also specialty libraries too, which are open to the public. Like we the Andrew High School Library for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So any NYPL um, card holder can go there. But if you are legally blind, you are eligible from our services to get like books by mail, and it's like on audio tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to do is if there are things so let's say that someone out there is like, oh my gosh, look at this amazing list, which I promise we're going to talk about in a minute. I don't think my library has these books, right? one of the things you can also do is like go to your library and say, I mean, I know it's really hard to sort of like get up the gumption. If you think you can't do it in person, you can write a letter. I'm a romance reader. And I found this really cool list from the New York Public Library. And I know that we are not the New York Public Library, right? But I looked and, I wish we had more romance. Like, I think librarians love to hear like what their people in their community want to read, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it makes us
Yes.
like really happy. Like last year, well, actually last March, like our romance and our urban books were in the same bookcase and they were very crowded. And I was able to get some bookcase space moved so the urban books now have their own section.
yeah.
And my urban readers are like excited because now they don't have to like basically be crouching on the floor to get the books. We have more space. And then the
Right.
romance section, because now we had more shelves, that exploded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I will take this to my dying day. A patron came up to me. It's like, that romance section got so much better. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, right. But they have to, right? But like your library can only know that you want that if you tell them, right? If you're checking out those
Yep.
materials, if you are, and so like I said, if you think you can't like walk up to them and say, I'm a romance reader, where's your romance section? You could like, look and then send them a letter later. Hey, I promise they're not gonna like stop you at the door. Um,
No.
okay.
And if
So
anything, you'll find out your librarian's a closet romance reader too, and be like, let us
Yes.
talk in the corner.
yes, I love that. Okay. So let's talk about the list. How many books ended up on the list? And then, like, tell us about some of the ones that you just think are the best that Fated Mates listeners might want to read about or read.
Um, we have a total of 50. And
Yeah, it's
because I
amazing.
was listening to the podcast from the other week and Sarah was talking about the little birds outside her window, I'm wondering
Yeah.
if birding with benefits would be a big hit
Oh, yeah,
because
sure.
they're so cute. And it's like, and I'm like, and of course, it's like I read this book months ago, and I'm
No, it's
quickly,
fine.
yes,
Yeah.
Celeste is a divorcee. She is just doing her URES, and she winds up accidentally involved in a birding competition, and as this guy's fake girlfriend, and it's so sweet. And also, I'm also a bird person. I have 4 parakeets. They are not here right now. That's why it's quiet. And it was delightful for me. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
they thought that bird.
Yeah. And that's like an example of like it was a debut romance last year too. So it's also nice. Like a lot of people, it might not be on your radar because this is a new author. Right. Okay. Grace, what about you? Give us one of your favorites.
So I can't give you one, but I can give you a whole block of them.
Fine.
Um,
7
I'll
of
take
them.
it.
Towards the end of the committee, I realized there wasn't a plethora of historicals on the list. So I nominated constantly. Like I think I may have nominated 12 on one Saturday.
Well done.
I think I cried
And
a little
so
bit.
because they all had to read them like in
Yeah.
1 week. I'm so sorry. That was horrible of me. But
And I was the person who had to send the email going like, hey guys, blame Grace,
but
but
Grace had a small breakdown. But yeah, so 7 of them made it on the list, I think. And they're all really wonderful. Julianne Long's new one's on there.
Yeah, it's so good.
Um, uh, Amelie Howard had a pirate romance that was on there. Any Duke in a Storm, which I've been working my way to getting a pirate romance on this list,
Nice.
she
and
has.
now I feel like I've culminated, and I'm happy with my life now. Um, yeah, and there are a whole bunch of others that are on
Oh,
the
the
list,
Sophie
and
Jordan.
Oh yeah.
yes, the Sophie
Oh
Jordan.
my God, I love that one. Oh,
Yeah,
Oh yeah, the next
oh
in the Countess. I don't
yeah,
think that was the first
it
one.
was it was
it,
the
the
Duchess.
The
Duchess.
Duchess, yeah.
It was so good. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
like yeah,
Yeah.
last year for me
that's my favorites.
Yeah.
it was like moody historicals and also baseball romances. And it's like the historicals made sense. Baseball does not. I'm not a big understander of
Sometimes
baseball,
that's
but
just
I
the
was
way it
like, I
goes.
was there.
Yeah, right. Well, and 50 books, I mean, and the thing about like we talk all the time about discoverability and how hard it is, right? There is a flood of books out there. There's so many. And so having someone, and especially like, a list like this where it's not just a listicle, right? Librarians read these books and they are the ones saying these are great reads. So that means that these are like for a lot of people, I was looking at the list, there are books I had not heard of, or there are other books where I was like, oh, this was on my radar. I forgot about it. And so it was exciting to see that like sort of pop up again for me. And the fact that they're all essentially pretty recent, right? These were all 20, that 2024,
2024.
right? Means that you could definitely
Yeah.
get to the point where, you're like, oh, there's definitely a book, a book I can find that and it's all different kinds of subgenres. So it's not just,
Yeah.
rom-coms or, like there's really something for everyone on this list. But it's not 500 books,
Yeah,
right?
we're all a bunch of diverse readers, and the list reflects that. It's
Yeah.
a very diverse and varied list, and we're very proud of it.
You should be. It's terrific. And we're
Thank you.
really happy to have this, have this happen. So, next year maybe we'll get it together and like actually get you on a little bit further in advance. Like this kind of all came at us in a rush. But this is a big fun weekend. This is also a time I would imagine a lot of people are willing to try a romance, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
they've never done it before. And so this is a great, it's a great place to start, and it's a terrific list.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with Fated Mates listeners before we go?
There may have been some undignified screaming and cheering when we got the email that you wanted to talk
Yes.
to us today.
Oh, I'm really happy that we could do this because we know that, listen, every single romance reader I know was made a romance reader at a library, right? Because
Yeah.
we read too fast to
Yes.
really, unless you're really independently wealthy, you're really relying heavily on the library. And I tell the story all the time. I grew up in Cleveland, and Cuyahoga County Public Library is where we would go to, like, the North Olmsted branch was my branch. And my mom, like you guys, I love the story. My son thinks this is like the funniest story ever. My mom had to like go up and make special borrowing privileges for me because she got them to move me from like 20 books to 50 or whatever
Nice.
because I just was like moving through them so fast. And we had like a whole like system in my house. Like all the books stayed in one place and I would like take them and put them back. And you know, I and you know what else I feel like thinking back, right? Like I was a teenage romance reader, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
those the people in that branch never questioned me, right? They never said, "Should
No.
you be reading this?" or right? Like they trusted me as a reader and to know what I wanted to read. And I like that's the greatest gift that any reader could ever have is someone who says to them, "This is what you want to read. Let me make that happen." And I'm not going to question you. And so from me, I just want to say thanks to all the librarians, but I think a lot of us have had that experience. So thank you, Grace and Kate, and all of the librarians
Mhm.
everywhere. You're the ones who make us great because we couldn't do without you. Literally, I'd be destitute in the street without the library, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Grace, do you also have to be like, have to have like a minder go with you to the Ripped Bodice?
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'm like, I'm afraid to go
Yes.
in there. Like, I'm like, should I just give him my like wallet?
Yeah,
Like, can
just
you guys hold it and only let me buy like 3 books
oh yeah,
and
right.
4 stickers?
Yeah, the first time I went
Yeah.
into the Rip Bodice, I gave myself like a number. I was like, I
Yeah.
can spend this much
Mhm.
money in here.
Yeah, I think I actually
Um,
started
I
crying in there. I was so overwhelmed with joy.
I went to the Ripped Bodice after I went axe throwing, which I'm very good at, by the way.
Oh.
Nobody would expect this of me. Um,
I do.
I had to bring my sister with me. I had to bring my sister with me, and she gave me 2 books and 1 trinket, and that was it.
That was it.
I did
Yeah.
not obey her. I did not obey her. I walked out with 2 shopping bags.
Don't obey in advance. We know the rules for
Mm-mm.
2025.
Yeah, and
Um,
one of my girlfriends lives right by there, and she's like, I have to walk by with blinders
yeah, right,
so she
exactly.
doesn't go there right after work every
But you
day.
don't have to feel that way at the library. You can get
No, it's all
whatever you
free.
want at the right, exactly. And you know what though? It's we joke it's not free, like right? Our tax dollars
Yeah.
pay for the library, and
Yes.
we deserve the library. That you know what? We deserve the library, and it's a wonderful thing. One of the literally the most magical things ever. So, this is a great list. I think it's gonna be it's terrific to know that it exists. And I think I just probably didn't, sometimes you just get into blinders with your own library system, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
really nice to know that it's out there. All right. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And
Thank
this
you
is going
so
to show up on
much.
our YouTube
Thank you.
channel. So everybody will see our like smiling faces. And if you were ever at their branches, you should definitely say hi and that you saw them on the Faded Mates YouTube channel. And I know I have a friend who lives on the Upper West Side. So if I'm ever there, maybe we'll walk over.
Ooh, that would be great.
I've never been to Staten Island, Grace. So I'm sorry. That might not happen for me and you, but
It's totally fine. It's a journey.
But the ferry is free.
yeah, that's
The
true.
ferry is free.
I
The
know that
ferry is
because
free.
of
It's very
Working
exciting.
Girl, the movie. That's how old I am, but it's fine.
I love that movie.
I
I
know
love that movie.
because
It
it's the best. That's the best.
is. It
Great
is the best.
romance. What a way to end. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
Valentine's
you.
Day.